podcast is powered by PKF. PKF, your trusted advisor in the hunter for over 45 years. Down to Business acknowledges the traditional owners of the land and waters this podcast is recorded on.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Down to Business. And today I'm joined by Mr. George Tuntevski from the newly named Sharp Office, formerly Sharp Electronics Group. That, you know, for many would know Sharp, they've been in business this year for 50 years, which is no mean feat in anyone's language. George, a friend of many. We have a bit of a piss take half the time. A Merriweather Greens legend, so he says. And no shrinking violet, and a great friend of ours here at our business in PKF. And today we want to talk to George really about his interesting background, what it's like running an organisation, and really maybe some tips that people and viewers can get to maybe they can use in their own business. So welcome, George.
Thanks, Beach. Thanks for having me.
Mate, the first thing I want to get people to understand is, how you got into Sharp and a bit of the background, because from my understanding, you didn't know a lot about office products or machines apart from breaking them. So why don't you give us a bit of background around your history and how you ended up to where you are today?
Yeah, great. Yeah, certainly will. It's certainly an interesting story in how I have got here. But I'd known JD for 20-odd years through my association through a finance company that I worked for at the time called Bridge Wholesale.
That's John Duncan that many would know here in Newcastle.
Yep, and basically I'd done a few moves. The branch had been acquired by GE, ended up in Sydney working for GE Commercial, then ended up working for Lloyd's Banking Group, setting up a business for them. GFC hit, and that was a big toll, I've got to say. Gone through the pandemic and the GFC, different kettle of fish. You work for a bank and you get told midway through a month you've got no money to lend. So it was tough to manage a sales team. It was time for me to come home.
Because you were commuting too,
yeah,
weren't you?
So we were commuting, still living in Newcastle. So spent a lot of time travelling. We had staff in every state virtually. So every 4 to 6 weeks I was in Perth. And it took its toll. And I think the way the group, Lloyd's Banking Group, handled the GFC and the way they really told the staff 3-4 months in advance that we're going to make 3/4 or half the staff redundant and then let them hanging there. It took a lot of toll on me and a lot on a lot of people actually. And I decided to give JD a phone call just to see what was happening. It was time for me to come back home, but I really didn't know where to start, being out of the local sort of market for about 15, 16 years. And from that point we got talking and JD said, let's catch up. And as normally JD and I would do, make sure there was no beers involved. So it was a sensible conversation. And JD, it was great. We spent the afternoon and had a bite to eat and a coffee. And I think we started at 12:30 and we finished at 4:30. A lot of background. JD knew my background with the Greens, knew my family in relation to married to Jen, a couple of kids, wanted to know a lot about what was happening with my family. That's typical JD. And virtually, he was looking at a succession plan. He'd been in and out of the business for a while, but turning 70 in 5 years at the time, he wanted to exit strategy, and his plan was to give it to the boys that had worked with him in the management team. So within the management team, there was over 100 years' experience, and it was great.
And just on that, before you get too much in the business, I mean, I think now in 2021, it's becoming a lot more common, even people aspiring to move out of the cities into places like Newcastle, and you look around us and everything that's going on. But, we're talking 10 years ago, thereabouts, when you had this conversation. That'd be about right? Yeah. I mean, that's a big move. And what were some of the considerations to come back, not just a home, but from a career point of view?
I don't think it was, the career point of view wasn't there. It was more lifestyle. And it was cutthroat. I mean, when you've got presentations or you've got a meeting with the overseas parent, it's times that suits them. It's never the time that suits us when we're trading. And you just can't keep up with the pace. It was just enough. It was more of a change back to trying to get back to a normal lifestyle. And I took the attitude model B will be. I knew I had to make some sacrifices, but just back myself in getting to where I wanted to get to.
And I think that's one of the biggest thing that's changed. You know, even we employ a lot of people. We used to be able to get people out of Sydney, and you know, I remember you say sell down there, move up the beach, have some change. Well, that obviously doesn't occur anymore, and that's only from an attraction point of view. But I think you'd attest to, you know, well, the benefits that have been received and the opportunities that's created by not only having that conversation, but looking to make the move. And I guess what I'm trying to get at from an employer's point of view, often we just look in our own little pool, but we need to look beyond that.
Totally agree. And you look at the pandemic, what it showed us about working from home. If that was 10 years ago, I think it would have been a different game ball. I think you would have certainly said, oh, let's give this a crack. We can easily work from home 2 or 3 days. But it just wasn't to be. It just wasn't mentioned at the time. So, you know, one of my funniest things, I'd normally get into the office in Clarence Street, and there's a coffee shop downstairs. And I used to watch the people come off the buses, and no one smiled. And they were just, you know, you think, well, how am I going to get any work out of you if you're walking off that bus and you've already got the shits? It's just terrible. And you think, well, I've just sat on the bus. I've come from Campbelltown. So they've travelled probably longer than what I have from Newcastle. It's tough. And if 10 years ago they had that work from home thoughts like they do today, it would be a different kettle of fish.
Yeah, right. It's not just the technology. It's actually the culture and the, I guess, supporting a flexible workplace too. So
I think we're a lot more attuned to it these days, mate. Everyone's aware of it, and staff are knowing about it too. They're the ones pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, very good. So let's go on. So you had your infamous chat with JD, and I think I met you not long after that, and you ended up making the move.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I was one of the people in an office that when a paper jammed in the photocopy, I'd kick the photocopy and blame the copy. I know a lot more now, mate. It could be the paper. It could be a lot more things than the photocopier. So, but I knew the business. I knew of John. I knew the history and how well it was, the reputation of it, and standing in the space that it was playing.
I guess just to jump on that, before I forget it, one of the key points I wanted to get in that opening statement, you just nailed it, is it's about the business. So, and I remember JD saying this, you know, it's about, again, for viewers, if you're looking at your business, a lot of us when we look to hire, we want that person that fits that absolute box and have that skill set of what we do. But at the end of the day, we should be looking to say, what do we want them to do within the business? Yeah. And I know for you, it was all about people and sales and that sort of thing. Didn't necessarily have to know how many bloody pages per minute. There you go, I learnt some. How many pages per minute is printed?
Oh, mate, you're on the money. I mean, we are a people's business. I don't care what anyone sells. It says it comes from our staff, goes from the people perspective, our suppliers, and also our customers. And you need to manage that. You need to get on with them. Someone's going to sleep in the spare bedroom, but you got to dust off and go back and say, right, who was wrong and who was right? Let's get it better. But we're a people's business.
And on that, I guess the other aspect of that is by bringing someone total, I won't say left field, but you get what I mean. Not in that traditional know what we know. You're bringing other skill sets and other perspectives as well.
Yeah, totally agree. I think one thing that I took away from it when the discussion I had with JD was, he's a businessman that was 41 years in trading, doing very well, but he was prepared to change it. He was prepared to say, this isn't working, I need to do something differently. And he was prepared to do it, make a decision and say, right, this is the path we take. And, mate, it was a tough couple of years. It wasn't all roses. It was tough because people didn't have the right view of what was really happening. But to JD's credit, mate, he laid it on the table and this was the plan.
Yeah, no, and obviously the results speak for themselves. Not only, since you've been on board, but I think that the Sharp brand in Newcastle particularly, from, John starting as a door-to-door calculator salesman to 50th year in business, is a pretty, phenomenal achievement. So, it's hats off. But I guess then when you get into Sharp, like, with all due respect, you like me, I guess when you first would have come in and go, well, bloody photocopy's a photocopier and paper's paper. And
pencil's a pencil.
Yeah. So the big thing is point of difference.
Yep.
You touched on before, a people business, but what do you believe your point of difference is? How have you articulated that? And more importantly, how do you get everyone on the team on board with that? Because it only takes, 1 week link.
Mate, one thing about it is what I've learned in business, whether it's with Sharp or whether it's with GE Lloyd's Banking Group, you're not going to get everyone on board. So don't beat yourself up about it. And there's going to be a percentage of the staff that are going to think, no, I'm comfortable in just coming at 8:30, doing my job, getting paid, and that'll do. So that's fine to me, because I don't need everyone to be high achievers. So you've got to work with the people that are on board to push the message. So that's point one. But I think with us, it's more about the people relationships that we build with the customers, the trust. And the way we push that message is quite simple, is we deliver. And I think, we have standards internally on SLAs, with our photocopiers, with SEMPOS, and our office products. I mean, we do compete with the likes of the nationals being Officeworks and Wink, but we do quite well, simply because we offer a local service, we employ local people, and we deliver. I think that at the end of the day, if you don't deliver, you get found out pretty quickly around town here. And the other thing with the staff is, in the first 2 years, we had to communicate. We had to communicate, talk to them, and keep them abreast of things. What are we doing? Don't change too much too soon, because it certainly changes the atmosphere and the way the dynamics works. And we just try, we can spend a lot of time marketing. To me, the marketing is done by the sales guys. They haven't got a good story to sell. They're not going to make a sale.
Yeah, I think it's a great point you just raised about communication. A lot of these videos that we've done previously, just some common threads in there, and communication's one of them. I see far too many business owners that want to drip feed staff. I mean, in my experience, your team aren't silly. They know when things are going on. It's better to be up front and engage and get people involved in the process, because they might even bring some great ideas to it as well. But and I like your other point. You see, not everyone is going to get on board. Jack Welsh from GE, you mentioned before, but I'm sure you didn't deal with Jack directly when you were working.
I pitched to his predecessor, email.
Well, I think, you look on that aspect, and he describes, one of the greatest, people managers, if you like, but talks about you're always going to have that 10% that really don't belong. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just not everyone fits. So I think your point's very valid. Don't beat yourself up.
Oh, mate, I totally agree. I think business owners do that, and we get a bit disenchanted and disheartened about it, but that's just life. The first 2 years of my role with JD was tough, because people didn't know. They thought, who's this big bear? He's pruning it up, he's improving it, and he's going to sell it. We're not going to have a job. But to JD's credit, he said, no, I don't want to lay awake at night, sell the business, and knowing that the business would be sliced and diced. Because of the size of our business, that's what would happen, because no one really knows how the 3 business units work, so that's what would happen. So he made it quite clear to me that that's the path we take. And the other thing too is you got to care, and we've all got our problems. We all have a domestic at home, but if you
I don't, George.
Oh no, I don't know about that, Beats. I know Jen and I do, but in relation to it, but just caring, because people have got problems and people have got issues, and COVID was a big one for me in that respect, and I assumed a lot of things, which was completely wrong. But just caring, if you show a bit of care to your staff, and they'll give you a back in spadeful.
Yeah, no, I agree. And John always used to have a saying, and I know you've carried it through, that, used to say, oh, you've got 60 staff or whatever it may be. And he goes, we haven't got 60 staff. We affect 60 families. And I think that's a great way of looking at it. And all too often, as, we get stressed, we get busy, we forget about, what our biggest asset is, which is our people. Even from on the bean counter, even from an accounting point of view, we've got them as an expense or a liability. But reality is, if we don't get our people right, nothing else is going to work.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, I'll never forget one thing that JD made me do is go to meet every staff member, know their family, who their partners were, and find something about them and make sure I knew about it. That was one thing. The other thing that still sticks, and I use it a fair bit when I talk to the team, management team, is that whatever business decision we make, it doesn't impact 60, 60 by 4
Mm.
because you got other staff members. So, it's a simple thing too. And he's right in what he's saying.
Yeah, very good. Mate, moving on to the business, what have been your, and I'm not just talking whether you were before you were an owner, but just generally, what have been your biggest challenges, especially coming from that corporate environment? There's probably a lot more, at-call support, if you like.
And governance.
Yeah, exactly. And then coming into effectively an SME, regardless of what profile you got, what have been your biggest challenges?
I think the biggest challenge is change. Why do we need to change? We've been doing it for 40 years. We're successful. And our average tenure, as you know, Beach, is around 15 years of our staff. So a lot of people have been there for a long time. They might be lazy and they don't want to go. Or you know what? They enjoy what they do. And I think it's the latter. But at the same time, the change in trying to implement change was really tough. And then trying to get my head around, okay, well, why do we do this? There wasn't set processes. And that's not being disrespectful to the guys that were there previously, because they just got on with business, head down, pedalled hard, and got it done. But then when you start bringing in new staff members or new people want to know why do we do it and how do we do it, and that becomes tough. And that, to me, was the biggest challenge. And I think the other thing was a bit of that fear factor, not coming from that printing, photocopier, office products and technology with our SenPos. And mate, I'm not technology driven. I'm a front rower that just played with a single digit on my back for a long, long time. And
I'll vouch for the technology part.
So that to me was, I was venturing into the unknown. But I just sort of
answered this in one of the earlier in the chat, but both those issues I think have been addressed by a bit of transparency and communication.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'd say is getting that respect by taking ownership of when there is an issue or when you don't know something, rather than trying to bullshit.
Yeah. The other thing too, mate, as business leaders, as management of people, guess what? We will get a decision wrong. But there's nothing wrong with going back and saying, oh, shit, we got it wrong, but this is what we're going to do now, or what do you think? And I think the other factor that I think played well in our hands is that we started engaging the staff in what their thoughts and what they were thinking, where that never happened before. That changed the tide for us slowly, but it was certainly a tough one. But yeah, it's a matter of saying, hey, this is the path we take, and off we go.
Yeah, I think, I agree with you about the change, and I remember having a conversation with John Duncan earlier about, before you came in, about where they were at and that, are we being innovative? Are we changing? I think the great Jack Gibson said, I'll probably get this wrong, but if you're standing still, you're moving backwards.
Yeah.
And I think that applies for business every day of the week. More and more, we just said about flexible and, workplaces and Zoom technology or Microsoft Teams, or whatever it may be, and the way we work. We're moving at a fast pace. And I think consistently we need to be going, not necessarily how can we change our core values, how can we change our core offering, but how can we just continuously improve?
Don't stand still.
Yeah, well, we've got something in our workplace where it says, look, there's a process, but the process not set in stone. We want everyone using the process, whatever that process may be, but look, we want to know if we can improve it, and having things like whether it be an online platform for people to put ideas up, or whether it be an ideas board on the wall, just getting people to be given thoughts, because you've got, as you said, circa 60 people in your business. Well, there's 60 different ways potentially of looking at things. So we need to really get that out of them.
Yeah, and mate, my common theme to them is, if I give you a blank sheet of paper and you had an opportunity to start fresh, how would you do it?
Yep.
Would you do it the same way, or would you change it and then go from there? So, and it's worked well. Still got a long way to go. I don't think we've hit the top of the mountain, but it's a work in progress. It changes, just like everything. I still think the old days too. Don't just get rid of everything and just processes, because it can strangle you. If someone says, I'm not going to do that because that's not what the process says. Well, that's not the type of business we are. So, yeah.
And talking about the business, for those that don't know, tell us a bit about Sharp Office. I'll get that name right. You got multiple divisions. You are an office solutions, not just paper and pens, as we said before.
Yeah, mate, it's an interesting business. Challenging that we've got three different businesses within the one. We're the longest standing sharp dealer in Australia, 40 odd years, so kudos to us. Office Products was certainly something that was built from an acquisition, and that's just gone and grown, and certainly an interesting part of our business. It's one of those businesses where it takes a lot of people to make an invoice happen from the time of order to delivery. And Sempos is our baby. I mean, seeing that where it is today and where it was 10 years ago and where it was 30 years ago is certainly exciting.
And Sempos being the
point of sale
for clubs and pubs and hospitality.
Correct. And we do it all in-house. We actually we develop it, we support it, we install it. We've got over 300 venues. What do I like about it? It's where I frequent a lot in pubs and clubs, so I know what a schooner charges and what it costs, but really at the same time, it's changing, it's evolving, and it's our baby. I've got no one ringing me every quarter saying you haven't hit your supplier targets, or George, we need you to buy some more stock. We buy as we need, and then we have a punt. We say, well, we're going to have a cracking quarter. Well, let's load up on some stock and go for it, which is quite refreshing, when you've got suppliers in both of the other businesses that are looking at targets. And the days are gone where suppliers should be asking to get 20% increases because it's not there. But certainly an exciting part of our business. So each one of them are different, different needs, different customer base, and different people.
But it's a good point you just mentioned about suppliers too, because we've got the annual golf day coming up, and a lot of suppliers get to that, and just talking to them, which I have over the years, good relationships there, which again forms part of, I guess, that underlying business values.
Yeah, mate. At the end of the day, we have one ethos that we speak about back at Sharp. We say Sharp Office, sorry, that if it's got to be a win-win for both parties. If one of us feel that we're getting screwed over by the other, we'll walk away and it'll never be a relationship. So it's got to be win-win for both of us. We're probably the most lowest maintenance dealer for Sharp and Kia Sierra, because we just get on with our business. If there's an issue, we'll go directly to the channel and say, listen, we're not happy. And if we want to do business, we know where to go. But it's got to be a win-win for both parties. And that goes with customers too.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, again, but it comes back to that
points I got.
Relationships. Yeah, well,
it does.
It's the first time you've probably had this many, but it is. It's all relationship, and I think that's the key message we keep trying to get across. And for whatever reason, it's one of the probably most neglected parts of business, unfortunately.
Oh, man, when you're working in a dealer network, there's so much energy spent by dealers that are whinging and whining and not happy. And I just don't know where they get the energy, because it just saps you. You spend all day whinging and whining, you're not going to be very productive. But it happens.
Yeah, I think one of the other points I want to get across, what you have done really well in recent years, and don't get me wrong, I know it was a work in progress for a long time, but as the business has grown with these multiple divisions, we've put a lot more, I guess, focus on what does the customer need as opposed to what do I know?
Yeah.
As opposed to someone going out and just selling a copier, that there might also be stationery needs, or I don't know, whatever. But put it back to the customer around, hey, the customer's a relationship. What are their needs? How can we potentially fix those needs or fill those needs? And even if the person in front of that customer is not necessarily the right person, we can still listen, communicate internally, make it about our audience.
Yeah, you've nailed it there, Beach, because I think we have to start becoming more of a solution provider than saying, here's a box, it prints this, it does this, feeds and speeds, you'll get X amount of prints out of your toners. It's, what do you want, Mr. Customer? And I think if we get anything out of COVID, is all about the customer saying, oh, I need this, well, why don't you know that we do that? So I think it's changing a lot. We have tried hard, and we've knocked walls down, we've refitted our building, we've tried to be a one team, one solution, and it's been hard, but we're slowly getting there. But the customers are also your measuring gauge. They're your temperature gauge, because they're asking for different things, and they're changing. The customer's certainly changing.
That's very good. So with all that going on, we said a lot of team members, multiple divisions. We'll get to the owners aspect in a minute, but there's always a lot going on. How do you stay ahead of the game, and who do you surround yourself with?
Yeah, I didn't do uni at school. I didn't go to uni.
You can tell.
Yeah, I know. Thanks, mate. So a lot of my learnings has been by relationships with key people.
Can I just add to that? I'd like to challenge, and I say this to a lot of the people in our business. It's that school of hard knocks mentality, but there'd be that many people that went to uni that aren't doing too well, or the stuff you learn at uni you don't use again. And I think that's I've got a real passion for, as we bring kids through schooling. I'm going off on a different track here, but let's get entrepreneurs, let's get people that understand real world. So we take the piss, but I think you've landed all right.
Yeah, mate, I think so. I think I've done quite well. But I like to learn by looking at the way others do, reading what other business people do in relation to it, and mate, and be confident that you give it a crack. Don't be. The fear of failure is one thing, but you know what? If you fail, well, you'll get it right next time around. And also, mate, you've got to have some fun. You've got to hop out of bed every morning and say, mate, what are we going to do? We've got to win, and let's go for it. Because once you don't have the fun, and that's what happened to me at Lloyd's. I lost the fun, I lost the drive, and it was terrible. It was time to move on. But once you lose that, you may as well get out.
And some other points, I guess you're probably underselling a bit there. Like, you guys have got a very good governance structure with regards to meeting framework, reporting, etc. It's not just whilst you're the managing director. You bring, I guess, not just everyone in the business, but key people in the business together to have that brains trust to bounce things around, challenge each other.
Yeah.
There's some real good things happening there in that communication front, and not just rushing to implement things.
Yeah, but it's a good thing what you've just said. But I always challenge us we need to get better at it. Mate, I don't know what our code looks like in SendPod, /:, whatever. I've got no idea. Do I need to know? No, I don't. That's Darren Zink's area. He's the best at it. Let him go. David Potter's one of the best sales guys. Great relationship. Joel Anderson, Penny, they've all got their roles to play. I just have to steer the ship in the right direction. But they also need to understand where the business is right across, what's happening with it. And that's my role. So we try to keep within that boundary. Sometimes some of them go over that boundary, but that's just business. But yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, but I think it's everyone, as you said, knowing what their roles are, being very clear and accountable. Again, a lot of the things that most businesses struggle with. Also, that delegation aspect. There's true delegation, which is authentic, and then there's that delegation where you say you're delegating, but you're over someone's shoulder all the time.
Yeah.
I think over the years I've seen you guys progress on that as well.
Yeah, we have. We've changed a lot, and it's a matter of getting the balance right, and thinking strategically and thinking operationally. And sometimes the two get blurred, and when you have both of those meetings in the same bucket, you seem to be spending more time in one and not the other. But no, it's working well.
Yeah,
working
good.
Very well.
Good. And probably more personally, again, from a business leader's point of view, how do you personally maintain, I guess, motivation and focus? You said you ran out of it in your previous role. What's some of the tips, I guess, in that aspect? Apart from having fun.
I think you've got to try not to be across everything, and try to have a win during the day that's going to give you the most satisfaction. Now, it may not be the best win, but I've done, and it could be as simple as talking to a staff member that you found out's got an issue, that you say, hey, you need a hand, and spending some time with them. So I try to do that. I think keeping healthy, which I try to do, but probably don't do well enough. But also keeping in touch with what's happening out there, mate. Going out and having a beer and talking to your mates and what's happening out there. and finding out what's really happening. Now, I really enjoy going out seeing customers when I do get a chance, because once again, they're the ones that tell you good, bad or ugly. And I think we're lucky that we've got a solid customer base that are quite open and honest and will call it as they see it.
Yeah, good. Here's a tough one for you.
Oh,
It may not be tough. What have been your biggest lessons, if you haven't covered them already, not just within Sharp? I guess you could be in your working career, but even as a business owner as well.
Don't let anyone tell you can't do it. I think that's happened in my previous roles. And the other thing too is don't be afraid, because a 50-year-old business, if you change something, it's not going to break. It's not going. It's a matter of saying it didn't work. Let's go back and do it. But just don't be afraid. They're the two things. And one of the things I got taught from my old man is you treat people the way you want to get treated. You want to,
simple.
Yeah, and I've tried to have that philosophy. Sometimes I probably don't use that, but that's just the nature of the beast.
Well, common sense is not all that common, as they say.
Well, what is common sense?
yeah. Application. No, good. And I think one of the other things that and Dunco always did it well, and you guys have done, I think probably even more so. Being more junior as owners, if you like, but you surround yourselves with the right skill sets, the right people. You take advice, you apply it.
Yeah, I think that's real important, Beats, in having the ability to bounce ideas off your accountants, even your solicitors, and your colleagues that might be in different industries but have the same issues. And it's interesting, when we do talk, we've all got the same issues. Might be a different customer base, different product offering, but we've all got the same issues along the way. So, but no, you're right in what you're saying there, haven't been able to talk to people and bounce ideas. Yeah. But then the challenge is taking it on board.
Well, it's taken on board, but also then it's, as your business gets bigger, it's trying to then roll that out, apply it. And I mean, they're only ideas. The whole point, whether you've got mentoring happening in your business, whether you get coached, whether you've got advisors, whatever it may be, it's advice based on sometimes, legislation, sometimes people's opinion or experience. I think the best thing is being open to counsel, being open to getting information that you can then digest yourself and work out what you take on, what you don't, how you apply it, etc. But, too many people think they have to know everything. We got told a long, long time ago in our business, we don't call because you get, typical accountants, you get charged for every 6 minutes. So we said, right, we're going to do something about that. And we go, right, let's just not charge for general phone calls and stuff. So we want people calling, but you can say whatever you want. If the business owner themselves don't take it on or don't ask, it's pretty hard. I think that's hats off. Every business owner could learn to say it's easy to get advice up front, whether you apply it or not is another point, than fixing it later on.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah. Totally agree, mate.
Mate, I want to get specifically on incentives because obviously, as you mentioned earlier, John Duncan wanted a succession plan. And he'd been working on various things, and then probably when you come along, it slightly changed a bit. You went through a management buyout. Okay, so we've got 6 owners now.
Yep,
that all came through in that process, and you're leading the chorus of merry men and women for that matter. But talk to me about that whole incentive framework, and then the MBO, what you went through, pros and cons.
When you say incentive, what do you mean?
Well, I guess from the point of view of having that incentive to work towards. Yeah. I mean, I think when you came back on board, what you didn't say before was, there's one thing about coming on board from Sydney back up to here just to work in a business versus having that incentive to say, well, hey, I could be a business owner.
Yeah, that was a big incentive for me. And monetary-wise, I dropped a fair bit coming back. But from an incentive perspective, the business was solid. That was my view. I wanted to be a part of it. So we laid the foundation. So it took us 2 years to get to the game plan, and that gave us 2 years after that to 3 years to really set it in place. And it took us a fair bit, as you know, Beats. So once we sort of went around and chatted to the management team, we sort of picked up who was playing and who didn't want to play, but we also set some guidelines. we thought if everyone wants to play, there has to be some parameters, and let's see who can meet those parameters, and we'll see who's going to be on board. So that was in the initial stages, and then we formed it. Right, this is what we're going to do, and not everyone on the management team come on board, being for various reasons. And then basically from there, we sort of took the process from, started talking about, what's it look like from becoming a manager in a business to an owner of the business. There was a lot of talk around the financial impact. Was there any impact? But the boys also, were pretty well on board pretty quickly, the boys that are on board now, because they'd been waiting for this for some time. So it wasn't as if it was a surprise to them. They'd been sitting there for 5 or 6 years' time. I was just the conductor getting the band together.
Yeah, and I think, I know the boys you're talking about probably didn't have clarity around time frame. So I think that was a pretty key aspect to any successful transition. I know they didn't know who participated, and then you had Penny obviously come in the mix as well. So having that time frame, having a clear price, if you like, having the mechanics as to how it will work, what people's roles were, etc. I guess what I'm saying, for a successful, whether it be management buyout or succession plan generally, there's a lot of detail that needs to get actually pointed rather than just talk, generalisations.
I totally agree. I think where we were fortunate is that the core of us, we're in the business for a long, long time. So we knew what was operating, we knew the financials, we knew where the expenses were. So that wasn't a hard bit. Where I think we let ourselves down is we didn't set ourselves short-term goals. We didn't say, what do we want to achieve in the first 90 days? Where do we want to be at the end of 12 months? And where do we want to be at the end of 5 years, say? But we went straight to the 5 years plan and thought, this is where we're going to be. But, mate, there's a lot that happened in between the first day to the 5th year. And that to me, it took us a while, because we just went head down and bum up. And I think we focused too hard in making sure that there was no real impact to the Sharp name that John had built up. But yeah, it was business as usual. The doors opened up on the 1st of July, and everyone looked at each other and say, so what do we do now? Well, nothing. Go out and sell photocopies, go and do this, and just do it as normal. But the planning in short term, I think, let us down in the early stages.
Yeah. No, but I think your key point there is too, giving yourself time.
Yeah.
It helps. We've said this, for too many people just jump in and go, right, I'm ready to get out.
Yeah.
Well, more importantly, the large majority of businesses don't have a succession plan. I think Sharp's been ahead of the game from that point of view. And then too many go, right, I want to sell, and think the only option is maybe a trade sale, where that incentive framework and looking at your key people, or even key people at other businesses that you could attract, such as yourself, and that's been what you've been through, is a real good strategy on a retention and ultimately succession for many business owners.
Oh, mate, you're right in what you're saying. And I mean, at the same time, it's changed the way we look at our people at the moment. We need to start planning for our succession plan and who are the key staff and what happens in that respect. So it certainly gives you a different view. And JD was lucky. I mean, he had the boys there that had been with him for over 60, 70 years. So there was certainly a lot of tenure there. But it's certainly a lot of due diligence, so to speak, and understanding your customer base, but also making the people that are purchasing the MBA or MBO is that they're across it. And I think to a degree, because I'd come from outside the business, it was a fresh set of eyes. And I think that's what made it work at the end of the day and the time frames.
Yeah, good. Well, I think having a plan first and foremost is the best start. So.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. And I think probably the other point I just wanted to come across was you have got a new brand.
Yeah.
I nearly stuffed it up at the start, but that's Sharp Office. Like I said, 50th year, decided to do a brand change. Not a massive brand change, but still going from what's known to something new. I mean, you said before about constant improvement. Why the change?
Ballsy, gutsy, call it whatever you want. COVID. I still wonder, a question I asked on Monday, if COVID hadn't hit, would we have gone up this path? So the dilemma at COVID was, and thank God for who gives a crap toilet paper and sanitizer, because it certainly kept the machine running. And that's the beauty about our business being diverse. While the other two businesses virtually stood still during lockdown, our office product business was just, we couldn't get the toilet paper in quick enough, sanitizer or any of the masks, which was quite interesting. But we were getting a lot of customers that were ringing us, and one of them was alias Pumpkinhead Richard Jones. And he said, "Hey, big fella, do you carry this?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Why don't you know that?" And then we'd sit down in the boardroom, and it was a common thing nearly every day to have a beer and recap on what's happening. Joel was coming up, Potts was saying, "I got this phone call," and I said, "Guys, we've got a problem here. Why are our customers ringing us when they don't know?" So we chatted and chatted, then I said, "Well, I think we need to get someone externally and let's have a look at our branding." I said, "There's something wrong here." And we engaged Oots, and then from there they did a survey internally, and that was quite interesting, and externally. And the internal one was, we feel old and outdated. Confusing. Our customers were saying, "We don't know if it's Sharp Electronics or Sharp Newcastle." So straight away they got 3 different names. So then that took a bit of work to do, and once again I think the process there, we engaged the staff, so we had focus groups, the staff were involved. The staff were involved all the way through, from the name, picking the name, the colours of our uniforms, and everything from that point. And then when it come on the table, and we said, "Well, it's time to do it."
Yep.
We either do it now, or don't bitch and whine about it and don't expect a different result if we're doing the same thing. And we had to, mate, because it was just telling us. And if we neglected that information, we still would have been successful, but we wouldn't have gone to the next level. So it was certainly an interesting exercise, scary, but exciting.
Congratulations, I guess, all around. But,
thanks, mate.
Just a recap, I think some of the key things today is about relationships, communication, being transparent with your people. As you said, not being scared to have a crack, and not being, having someone tell you can't do things. Surrounding yourself with good people, both internally and externally. And for me, I guess some of the other aspects you said around, that incentive and how can that play into your strategy and succession planning. And the other thing was around that innovation and always how can we be better, knowing your customers, having chats, making sure you're getting feedback. So some real key messages for business owners, let alone understanding a bit more about Sharp. Got anything else, mate? Race tips? No?
No race tips, as you know, mate. Our punters club is the worst punters club in the world.
But great business. If you do need anything, go to Sharp Office. But George, thanks for taking the time with Down to Business. Appreciate the chat, and well done.
My pleasure, mate.
Cheers. Till next time.